and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. Welcome to this week's episode of The Consented Narrative, where we're looking at the very first Bond novel, Casino Royale. Now, it was written by Ian Fleming and it was published in 1953. It was then adapted to screen in 1954, 1967 and 2006. However, I will be solely looking at the 2006 version starring Daniel Craig. So I will be looking at three things as usual. I'll be looking at the plot, I will be looking at how good is the film, and I will be looking at how good is the book. Now, obviously, please bear in mind that there are spoilers within this episode, as there are spoilers in every episode. So if you haven't watched the film or read the book and you would like to before watching this, then go ahead and do that and come back to me another day. So first things first, let's have a look at the film. Now, this is, ironically as well, Daniel Craig's first James Bond film, and it's our first look at who he is as Bond. He does play the 007 extremely well. I do remember when he was cast, there was a lot of outcry because his hair was too short, he was too blonde, it was, honestly, there was just everything, and it was just quite funny. But he's proved himself as Bond several times since then. In fact, to be fair, this is my favourite one with Daniel Craig in it. Skyfall is a very close second, but this is my favourite. I love the pace of the film. I love how easy the story is to follow. It doesn't get the only bit that does get a little bit too complicated for me is the scene where they're playing Texas Hold'em, because I really don't understand cards. And please, if people are out there thinking, oh, I can teach her, it's really easy, people have tried, and the truth is, I don't care at this point in my life. I'm 28 years old, I can get by without having to know how to play Texas Hold'em or Baccarat as it is in the book, and I still don't know. Like, I haven't got a clue. I don't want to know. I'm not bothered. That's the only scene that I can't really follow, but it is quite funny. There's a line as he's getting, like, he gets poisoned, he goes off, he manages to save himself, come back, and then he sits down and goes, that last hand almost killed me. And honestly, I love the Bond lines, because like in every single film there will be a line at least where they say it and you just sat there being like, I see what you did there. It was very good to see a villain that is literally only doing what he is doing for money. He doesn't want to take over the world. He doesn't, have political aspirations or anything like that. He literally just needs money because he invested in something that he was going to blow something up, and then their stock prices were going to go and he was going to make money on the stock market. However, he didn't, because Bond foiled the plot, which meant that he then owed money to a lot of people, a lot of bad people. So the villain is literally just playing poker or Texas Hold'em or whatever to just get money. And it was quite nice to just sort of see that. Like, he's not bothered about anything else, really. Now, the twists and turns in this film as well were a delight to follow. And honestly, by the end of it, you sat there. And even, like, when you see the end, you just sat there going, that was a nice, like, I enjoyed that. That was a good story. It was easy to follow. It was lovely. You can watch it with you, like, by yourself. You can watch it with your family. I mean, it's, the torture scene is a little bit sort of, like, intense. With the fact that he's, manhood gets beaten, is quite, so maybe not with your parents, but honestly it is a very enjoyable film, and you really get a feel for the franchise, as Daniel Craig is a 007. So this film gets an 8 out of 10 for me, and I would definitely watch it again. I will watch it many a time, because my husband is a huge fan of Bond, which is why, it's a surprise that it's taken me this long to do a Bond book to film adaptation. So, the book. Now, this is ironically as well the only Bond book I've read so far. Doesn't mean it's going to be the last. Hopefully I'll be going for a long time, and hopefully I will be doing ones in the future. But also this is the very first Bond book that was written as well, so this is why I thought it would be a good chance to start with this one. Now, I think Michael told me that Ian Fleming actually wrote this while he was sort of like waiting to get married. Like, for someone to come up with that idea while they're just waiting to get married, all I was thinking about was whether or not the centerpieces were there, whether or not the bridesmaids were there. Like, insane, absolutely insane. But it is a really good book. It is very well written. The story is good. It has it on the edge of your seat the entire time. You see the world through the 007 sides. Now, in the book, I will mention it in great more detail in the plot, but he's a lot more cynical. He's a lot more sort of like calculating. His views on women are very dated now, but probably when they were written, not as dated as maybe they should have been at that point. And his views on the world in general are just sort of very clear cut, black and white. This is what's happening, this is what I am, this is what I do. And especially his approach as well to torture and death. Like in the torture scene in the book, he's literally just sat there being like, you know, I'm getting tortured, and it is hell for him. But it's like, if I die, I die, you know. And it's such a weird, because like, obviously we're like, us normal people aren't ever going to be in a situation where we're getting tortured and we're thinking of that, but he's just so calculating about literally every single part of his being and of everything that he is. And when he almost gets blown up in the book, literally afterwards, he's just sort of like, it shakes him a little bit of how close it was for him to die. But he also is just sort of like, well, if I was going to die, I was going to die. And he just carries on as he is. I must admit, I was bored a little bit by the extensive descriptions of the card game Baccarat. And again, I still am none the wiser, and I just found it a little dull. But it luckily, although it's an extensive description, it's not in for very long. And it doesn't really affect, you know, you can zone out of the extensive, like, interest. I mean, obviously I tried not to, but you can zone out because it doesn't affect anything to do with the plot. You know, you still get the win, the lose. You're sort of like, okay, then so he's winning, and now he's winning, and he's lost, and he, you know, it's basically black and white there. No, as I said, you know, my husband Michael is a huge James Bond fan. I wish you could see the bookshelf sort of like over at the back of our room, because it's just whole like things of Bond. There's like Bond figures everywhere. And the fact that he's been trying to get me to read these books for years, and I've finally relented. And it is a good book, and I did enjoy it. And I don't know why I sort of like dragged my heels on it. And to be perfectly honest, I will happily read more of James Bond and, you know, do more episodes for the channel. But it is an interesting book. It's got an interesting plot to it, and it's, you know, it's interesting to kind of see it through a cold and cynical person's eyes when they're thinking, you know, a woman's only good for two things, or, you know, I'm going to take that guy out, he's going to, do you know what I mean? It's very interesting to read. So the book gets a 7 out of 10 for me. And if anybody's trying to get into the sort of like the Bond universe and the Bond books and everything like that, it's a nice introduction to the world and the character. And I would happily read it again. So I would definitely recommend this book to anybody. Now the plot. So the film starts with Bond getting his 00 status. So you have to kill 2 people to get your 00 status. Then he traces down and stops a plot to blow up a new type of plane, which slowly brings him to going against the villain Le Chiffre in a Texas Hold'em game in Montenegro. Apologies if I didn't say that properly. As we know, me and pronunciations don't necessarily go hand in hand. The book, however, starts with Bond in a casino in Paris trying to figure out how Le Chiffre is planning on getting a lot of money quickly. So there's sort of like a whole build-up to before Bond finally goes against sort of Le Chiffre, before he ends up in Montenegro playing the game of Texas Hold'em. And, you know, in the book, it sort of like starts off with him already in Paris, already basically eyeing up Le Chiffre. And I think it's because in the book we get a sort of like a memo from one part of the intelligence agencies to another, say like detailing basically everything that went down in the beginning of the film. So I can understand why they did it that way. Now, in both, it is because Le Chiffre made bets with money that he was looking after for some serious terrorists and crime syndicates. So he owes a lot of money to a lot of bad people because he was basically the banker. Now, in the book, it's because he tried to start brothels and failed, as you do. And in the film, it's because he bet against a company in the stock market, but Bond stopped the bomb, just say that 10 times fast, from going off, and it lost him far too much in the stock market. So in both, Bond basically gets sent in to make sure Le Chiffre doesn't make the money back, so that the government can use his desperation to get info on the crime syndicates and the terrorists that he's basically been looking after money for. And as I said, this is all explained in a memo to M from a different part of the intelligence agencies, and this is why we see it in the film quite in detail, because it'd be really dull if you're just reading that long memo out. Like, I'd get bored, you'd get bored, like, it just wouldn't be... It wouldn't be film, basically, would it? So anyway, so in the book, Bond asks for Mathis to join him because he knows him, he trusts him. But in the film, he just kind of ends up with Mathis. And in the book, he also gets paired with a woman when he gets to the casino, which obviously we know is Vesper Lind, and he hates that. He has a few choice words to say about that. And he's also informed as well at this point that Felix Leiter, an American agent, is also on the scene. Now, in the film, Vesper is with him from the start because she works for the Treasury Department and she's basically looking after the money. And he doesn't find out about Leiter for a very long time until he's almost lost all his money. So in the book, there is an explosion that almost takes out Bond just after he met Vesper for the first time. And that kind of shakes him a little bit, but he kind of gets back on his feet and realises that actually a lot of people might know he's here, but he survived, he's fine, he's going on and all of that jazz. But anyway, so in the book he's introduced to Leiter before he even faces Le Chiffre. But in the film, it's when Bond is almost out of the game that Leiter introduces himself and backs Bond with his money to get Bond back in the game to beat Le Chiffre. So in both, we get the run-up and the first showdown in the casino between Bond and Le Chiffre. Book, as I said, is Baccarat, film is Texas Hold'em. And also, book is Paris, film is Montenegro. Now, we also learn in the book that Vesper is the PA of the head of S. So this is a part of the Secret Service concerned solely with Russia. And as I said in the film, she's the person in charge of the money from the Treasury. So two completely different job roles. So there's a few breaks in the game during the film. After the first one, he kills two men that are attempting to end Le Chiffre's life, who just happen to realise that James Bond is actually an agent, tries to take Bond out. Bond then takes them out and then goes back to the game and just carries on as if nothing's happened. But then when he goes back to the table, he loses to Le Chiffre for the first time. Now, in the book, he hasn't left the table, but again, the first time that he kind of comes across him, he loses to Le Chiffre all the same. And then this is when he gets backed by Leiter to keep going in the film, but in the book, obviously, he's still got money to spend, basically. So in the film, Bond gets poisoned and almost dies, as I mentioned earlier. But in the book, he has a henchman basically threaten to shoot him in the spine if he doesn't withdraw from the game. So in the film, he goes out to his car, he saves himself, he comes back, he sits down, and he basically carries on as if nothing's happened. In the book, Bond throws himself backwards, takes out the guy that's trying to kill him, and then just carries on and be like, oh, sorry, I had a bit of a spasm, basically. So then, in both, Bond comes back to the game, and he completely wipes Le Chiffre out. Like, completely. Like, there is nothing left. So in the film, due to Bond telling Vesper and Mathis about Le Chiffre's tell, he thinks that Mathis is a double agent. However, as I said earlier, Mathis is actually someone that Bond trusts very well. So that kind of sat a bit off with me because I feel like, you know, Mathis is a very strong character in the book, and almost, like, Bond doesn't have many friends, so for Bond to have that friend and trust him, to then, in the film, just throw him under the bus because he thinks that he's a double agent. But so Bond wins, and in the film, he hasn't yet transferred the money over to his personal bank account. In the book, it's like a check that he gets given. So the check he then kind of puts behind the room number, like screwed behind the room number on his door. And in the film, obviously, they just need a password from him. So after he's won, Vesper then gets kidnapped with someone pretending to be Mathis, luring her out. She gets kidnapped. Bond follows close behind. Now, in the book, he has a few choice words about how women shouldn't be in this job because obviously they fall for these chicks and obviously they get kidnapped. And even at some point, it's like, if it's basically her or Le Chiffre, I'm going to go for Le Chiffre and basically just leave her. She knows what she's doing. And I'm just like, fair play. Like, he'd be thinking probably the same thing about, well, maybe not about the men in such great detail, but yeah, so you see the cold calculating in it. Anyway, so as he's driving, he almost runs her over in the book and ends up crashing. In the film, tell a lie. In the film, he ends up almost running her over because she gets thrown out in the middle of the road and crashing. In the book, it's because they throw out spikes in the middle of the road and then he crashes in the car. But either way, he ends up being kidnapped by Le Chiffre and the henchman. So then, you know, Bond gets tortured by Le Chiffre to give up the money. There is a very explicit scene where he's sort of like getting his manhood thwacked to bits with a knotted rope in the film and a carpet beater in the book. Either way, not pleasant, not good. And he almost dies because in the film, obviously they want the password, in the book they want the check. So they want the money basically, and they torture him to get the money. However, Bond does not give up. He probably comes to terms with the fact that he'll probably die there. It doesn't matter what he does, but he's not giving up. However, Bond is then saved by a mysterious man who kills Latrice and his men but frees Vesper and Bond. So then Bond starts to recuperate in a fancy hospital in both. Now in the film, Mathis gets arrested for treason, and then Vesper ends up moving the money that Bond won into an account. Now in both, he develops feelings for Vesper over a period of time, and he realises that actually he might have been a little bit harsh with her. So he decides to then quit being a 00 and spend his life with her, which is so sweet because he starts the book basically being like, women are only good for one thing or two things, like they can't do this, they can't do that, and then he ends going, I'm going to leave my job and I'm going to go with her. I've got the winnings, I'm all good. And it is really sweet. Now, in the book, things start to go south when Bond realises that she's hiding something after a very suspect phone call where she decides that, you know, she's not going to tell him what it is. They kind of cool off for each other for a while and he realises that something isn't right. But in the film, it's when M calls and asks after the money that he was supposed to be depositing back into the Treasury's account, and he realises that Vesper has moved it into a different account and is about to basically wipe him out. So in the book, Vesper kills herself and leaves a letter explaining that she is a double agent and they had her fiance captured and basically were using that to try and get her to do what she wanted. However, she didn't want to put Bond in any risk, so she's decided to kill herself instead. In the film, there is a chase through Venice that results in Vesper dying and James returning to active duty. And it's a sad bit because he's in love and he loves her, and then he realizes that he's been betrayed, and then he's kind of thinking that everything he was thinking about women was true, and he's sat there going, no, I promise it's not. But yeah, so the book ends with Bond letting London know about Vesper's duplicity, and he even ends the line with, no, I can't swear. So he basically says, you know, the female dog is dead. We all know what a female dog is, so I'm not, you know, so that's not me swearing. But the film ends with Bond killing the man who killed Latrice, because he realises that he was inadvertently responsible for Vesper's death. So when Bond kills the guy that killed Latrice, it means that he's then able to go back on active duty and he has avenged Vesper because he still kind of loved her. So the plot had a brief moment in the middle where it had very similar momentum. However, the beginning and the end is almost like two completely different narratives. Never mind the fact that Vesper, Leiter, Mathis are all quite different in how they are portrayed in the film as to how they actually are in the book, and how they interact within the story. The game that Bond plays is different, as is the reason that Latrice needs the money. I mean, obviously he still lost a lot of money, but I do understand that in the film they can't really have it, you know, a man of the 21st century invested in brothels and failed, so that's why he needs the money. I kind of understand why they changed that bit. Now, obviously, you know, in little ways, Bond is much colder in the book, than he is in the film. Also, a drastic change, like Mathis actually being an old friend and not suspected of double-crossing as well. And Vesper had a bit of a bigger role in the book than she did in the film. The setting is different as well, because obviously, you know, he goes all over in the film, but in the book, it's basically in Paris. And yet they never go to Paris in the film. Never. Not even for a second. So I think overall the plot does get a 4 out of 10 for me. That doesn't mean that both the book and the film weren't fantastic. It just means that plot-wise they didn't really go down the same route. Now obviously this is my own opinion, as it is in every episode. If you agree or disagree with anything that I've said, please leave it below in the comments. If there's any book to film adaptations you'd like me to do, again, leave it below in the comments. If you click subscribe, you'll be notified when a new video comes out. But until then, remember to always keep it contento.